Alrighty, my friends, I am super excited today to have one of my really good friends on, but also somebody who is actually one of the main reasons why I was able to grow Money Peach starting back in 2015 is because of this young lady on the screen right here. She was probably one of the biggest roles in the very beginning of Money Peach. But that's what we're talking about here. The reason why I want to have Kayla on is I have gotten so many emails, questions on Facebook, especially during these last couple of weeks. People want to know, okay, how can I generate revenue from home? So 2 weeks ago, we had Deacon Hayes on. He talked about that. But one of the big things that I think intrigued people was becoming a virtual assistant, an at-home assistant virtually for people all over the world. Well, guess who helped me grow my business was Kayla Sloan, my virtual assistant. So Kayla, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I don't know that I've ever gotten such a flattering introduction before, but that was pretty amazing. So thank you so much for that. And for those of you who don't know me already, my name's Kayla Sloan, as Chris said, and I've worked as a virtual assistant for over 5 years. And now I actually coach and teach other people how to get started as a virtual assistant themselves, because so many people kept coming and asking me how I had built my business. And so teaching all of that is something I'm really passionate about, helping other women and men, but it is primarily a women-driven field typically, get started with this type of business. And so it's really exciting. I know this is a perfect opportunity. A lot of people are looking for at-home work. So thanks for having me.
Of course. So kind of the background here is I started Money Peach in 2015. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't even know what a blog was in 2015. So when I started, I was like learning what the word blog meant, and then I was becoming a blogger.
Right.
A good friend of mine drags me to this conference on the other side of the country in Charlotte. And I forget where it was, but I remember meeting you there and you were like, hey, I can help you grow your business. And I was like, I don't even think I have a business. So, but from there, you really, I mean, it was almost like you were my coach, because you held me accountable all the time. Like, hey, you told me you were going to have this sent to me. Why don't you have it done? I love that.
Yeah.
So when was that? That was in 2015, but do you remember how that all transpired? And
yeah, I think I ran into you at the conference with, I believe it was Deacon, and then our other good friend, Grayson Bell. I don't know if their audience has ever heard of him or not, but he's a great guy too. So we, I think, met through them and then started working together a couple weeks after FinCon. And what I really enjoyed about working with you as a brand new VA is that you gave me the opportunity to learn, to grow as a virtual assistant and as a person, obviously, and learn about business and grow alongside you. And I feel like that was a perfect opportunity, which for people out there thinking about becoming a virtual assistant, it doesn't have to be scary. That's one of the best things about working with clients like Chris and other smaller bloggers and things like that, is they give you the opportunity to learn and grow. So it's super fun.
I think one of the things that really interests me about a virtual assistant is there were things that I was trying to figure out how to do, and I didn't realize that there was people like yourself who could help me with that. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of, I was in this weird spot, because I think with being a virtual assistant is a business owner doesn't realize they need help in certain things. They didn't even know the help's out there until like someone like you comes along and says, you know, you really don't need to be doing that. I can help you do that. And
Mm-hmm.
once that kind of, once I understood that, that was a big change. So for the people who are watching this or listening to this right now, kind of what's an overview? What does a virtual assistant do? Because it sounds great, right? You get to work from home. It's
Right.
virtual, but
Right.
what does a virtual assistant do?
Yeah, that is a great question. So, what is a virtual assistant and what does a virtual assistant do? I think those are two of the big ones, because first, virtual assistant is kind of a newer term. It's something that's kind of come on the scenes in the last 5 to 7 years or so, I would say. I guess, yeah, 7 years, probably 7, 8 years now. Gosh, time flies, doesn't it? But anyway, still a fairly new term. So, people are not always quite as familiar with what a virtual assistant does. But basically, a virtual assistant can do any type of administrative support for a business that can be done virtually from home. So that could be things like answering phone calls, responding to emails, scheduling meetings, scheduling travel, booking, things, having things shipped, ordering equipment, all kinds of different stuff like that. Anything you could do from home virtually to support a business. So sometimes even those in-person, like admin type things that a secretary or an admin assistant might do in a business in person, you could do a lot of that stuff from home, which all of us, I think, are discovering these days as a lot of us have been sent to work from home and to find creative ways to do that. And then obviously other businesses are having to adapt because they aren't ready to work from home. So here we are in this situation where all of us are looking for new opportunities.
Now, I think a lot of us are, we're wondering, okay, great. How much money can I make? I promise you, we're going to be talking about the income, but there's steps to becoming an assistant. So becoming a virtual assistant, Kayla, is it mostly just you working for businesses, or are there people out there that just want virtual assistants to, book their airline tickets or to answer phone calls or do the kind of the day-to-day tasks virtually that they don't want to do? Do you see both?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's definitely virtual assistants for online businesses. There's virtual assistants for in-person businesses, such as I've seen a lot for real estate agents, event planners, things like that, they may have to send paperwork to people, work with vendors, book things, schedule things, make phone calls, that kind of stuff, right? So any of that. But then also busy executives are starting to hire virtual assistants to do things for them, like, again, scheduling grocery deliveries, scheduling food deliveries, booking travel, making all of those arrangements, maybe even making doctor's appointments or, all of those types of things that busy executives don't always have time to do, or maybe busy entrepreneurs. So you may find yourself working with someone who's a small business owner, maybe even someone like Chris, who started this out on his own. And it's possible that he could have asked me to do some of those personal things. And as long as, it didn't bother me, and that was okay with me to be part of my role, then what would be the harm in that? To me, I'm still helping you as the business owner to accomplish more in your business by taking some of those things off your plate.
Yeah, and I've noticed this too, is we have a mutual friend, and we were all going to Austin, Texas to do a meetup, and I was getting all these emails from him about here's some ideas of where we can go out to restaurants. Here's some ideas where, different VRBOs we can stay at. But I was like, this doesn't sound like him. I'm like, why he's not a guy that would put all this together. So I sent him a message and he's like, oh, that's my assistant. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. That now there's virtual assistants for businesses and virtual assistants for busy entrepreneurs. So, okay, now we kind of understand what a virtual assistant does, who they can help. So as somebody aspiring to want to make money from home, becoming a virtual assistant, step one is you have to do what?
Step one is you have to get out there and find the work, right? Because until you actually find a client who's willing to pay you to do things for them, you don't actually have a business, right? So you're not actually a VA until you do it.
And so I love this because I remember, I want to say it was at a food truck in Charlotte in 2015. We were there, and I want to say that's when you basically pitched your services,
Yeah, I will be honest, that year, I'm pretty sure one of my friends actually told me this last year. She was like, when I met you in 2015 at this conference, I kind of thought you were a crazy person because you were just hustling so hard to get out there and meet all these clients and really build your business and, establish yourself. And she's like, I didn't think you were aggressive or anything, but I just knew you were really excited about it and getting out there and pitching yourself. And I was like, yeah, I think I was. I'm pretty sure I just pitched myself to anybody who would listen that year. So.
But here you are. You wouldn't be here today.
I am.
Yeah.
That's
so how do you go out and look for and pitch clients? What are some recommendations you would give people?
So the first thing I always tell people is to not overlook your existing network, because those people are a lot more valuable to you than you may realize, right? So as a virtual assistant, just get yourself out there with friends and family first. You don't have to be super salesy about it. Just be genuine, because your friends and family want to support you. And they don't always have to do that by spending money with you. They could also even just put out an announcement to their friends and family that, they know you and they know you're looking for work and they know you're reputable, right? Or they could say, hey, I have a friend who has a business and maybe you can work with him. They could facilitate that introduction. So don't overlook your existing network of family and friends. They are there to support you, right? And then once you get past that existing network, the next step is going to be actually pitching clients, which is going to be kind of a lesson in and of itself. That could be a whole other thing. But
okay.
Yeah.
But
so
using your warm circle, right? Your warm audience.
That's the best way to get started.
So think about this. Those that are listening and watching right now. Let's say that you're on the other side of that. So let's say you have a friend or family member that is trying to, they're trying to do the right thing. They got laid off, their income has dropped, and they want to stay home. They want to make income from home. And they reach out to you and say, hey, I'm looking to become a virtual assistant. If you know of anybody, will you let me know? Or maybe could you put a post on your Facebook page just saying that I'm available?
Right.
Now think about this. Would you say no to that? right? If you wanted to help one of your friends and family, that
Right.
they ask you, now, are they going to do that automatically? No, you have to
Right.
ask them.
You
But of
do.
course you would say yes. So on the other side, then that's a great way to just really extend your reach for free. That's free marketing. It's just by using your network. So I love that.
Exactly.
Okay, so
Exactly.
now that you're pitching clients, let's say that we have a prospect, a client that calls you or contacts you and says, what's the first thing they're going to ask is, hey, Kayla, how much do you charge?
Oh, yes. That's always the first question. Hey, how much do you charge? So, what you need to do is figure out how to price your services, right? So, now you're on the phone with this prospective client, the pressure's on, they're asking you how much you charge, right? So, first, you have to know what services you're offering. So, whatever that is, whether that's again booking calls, booking travel, whatever that is, what's the value of that to you? What do you think your time is worth in providing that service, right? Now, you may be able to look that up online, do some research, kind of figure out what the market price is a little bit. And then don't forget to price accordingly, because you need to make sure you're charging enough to cover any expenses that you might have, such as an independent contractor, you have to pay for your own benefits or taxes. So you need to make sure that you have those covered in your rate. So for instance, if your bottom rate to earn a living is $10 an hour, then you need to make sure you're charging more than $10 an hour so you can cover your expenses on top of that and still pay yourself $10 an hour. Does that make sense?
Sure. What if somebody wanted to ask you this? What if somebody said, if you were to start somewhere, I mean, I'm just going to say, I don't think you should start at $10.
No, I don't either. Yeah. That was just a round figure. Okay, I figured it'd be good for easy math.
how much, what's a good starting rate when, people are, just getting started, especially if you have some experience with email, word processing, Google Suites and stuff like that. What are some things that, that you would think?
Yeah. The absolute bottom dollar that I would start out as a virtual assistant in the United States is $20 an hour. I would not go below that by any means. And I think you could definitely start higher than that if you have some experience to bring to the table from a related field. So it could be something like working already as an admin assistant for a small business or an entrepreneur, in person. And now you're just taking that virtually as a virtual assistant to create your own business, right? So you can still utilize that experience. You can utilize testimonials from that if you go back to that client and ask them to say nice things about you, right? So you can use those things to bolster your portfolio and charge more right off the bat. So you could be starting out charging $25 to $30 an hour or more. Again, technical VAs who offer really high touch or high tech services too, can charge as much as $60 to $70 an hour in the United States. So you can earn a very, very good living as a virtual assistant.
As a business owner on this end of it, here's what I will say to that is I remember Kayla and I were working together, I don't know, for 3 to 4 months. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. She is so helpful. All this stress has been removed. And I knew already in my mind that if Kayla asked me for a raise, I have to say yes, because I don't want to have to ever go and find somebody else. And so that is another way too, is you could come in and you can start at $20 an hour. But if you really do a good job to the point where, it's just like anything. If you find somebody, like a service that you really, really like, and you don't just like what they do, but you like them as a person, you're almost going to want to say, hey, can I pay you a little bit more so you stay here, right?
Yep, exactly.
And it sounds crazy, but on the business owner side, especially if there's systems and processes that are particular to your business and that virtual assistant learns them and knows them, or even makes them better, like you did in our case, it's almost like, whatever you want, we're just going to make that work, because it's worth it to me. So
exactly. And I think that's a big piece of it too, is that, the other piece of it, I hear from business owners and virtual assistants, if there's ever a situation where things don't work out, is a lot of times just a miscommunication. And I think a lot of it is really just like, virtual assistants making sure they ask the questions of the business owner, right? Like we talked about earlier, but then also, the business owner talking to the VA and being willing to extend those things and recognize that too, right? Because I think there's a value recognition on both sides that has to happen.
So if you're just joining us right now, this is Kayla Sloan. She is an expert virtual assistant. She's been doing this for 5 or 6 years now. She about 5 or 6 years. She was the very, very, very first person that ever was hired with Money Peach was Kayla, and literally she helped create all the processes, grow the business. I mean, it was it was the she was behind the scenes pushing all the buttons and pulling the levers, and I couldn't have done it without her. So if anybody has any questions, we are also doing this on Facebook Live, and we're streaming it to YouTube. You're more than welcome to ask questions. We can see your questions, and we can actually pop them on the screen. If you're listening on the podcast, then at the end of this episode, there'll be a link where you can come on and ask a question as well, and we'll get back to you. But so we talked about the first two things, Kayla, is number one, you got to look for and pitch clients. They're not coming to your door knocking saying, hey, would you like to work for me? You have to go out there. It's like, you have to go kill something, drag it home and eat it. It's not going to just fall at your doorstep. So same thing with growing a business. But the second thing we talked about was pricing your services. And I really like how you just set the flat. If you're a United States virtual assistant, it's $20 minimum, and it will go up from there, especially when you provide value. Number three, what are you recommending is the third thing people do become a virtual assistant?
Yeah. So number three, you need to make sure that your virtual assistant business is set up properly to make sure it's legit and it's legal, right? And the reason that I talk about this third is because this is the thing that seems to intimidate people, right? They get kind of hung up on these logistics. They don't actually get started. So that's why I make this step number three, because I want you guys to get started first. Okay. Get out there, get the client, get doing the work, get the money coming in, right? Then you can still set up the logistics of your business. I'm not going to say you should put these things off forever because they are important, but I think too many people let them hold them back. So some of these things are really just checking to see if you need to get a business license, for example. A lot of virtual assistants don't need them because they're working at home. They're not charging taxes on their services, but that is something you should double check for your city and state because laws can vary, obviously. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to make a specific recommendation there. And then also make sure that you look into setting up a business structure or entity. Talk to the appropriate people about that, your business accountant for tax purposes, a lawyer if needed, to make sure that you have everything set up that way if you're going to be forming an entity like an LLC to protect yourself. Those type of things are things you need to start looking at after you kind of get the wheels turning and get the business running, right? And then finally, the last thing you need to do is make sure you have a contract. And this is something you need to have signed before you start working with the client. I'm pretty sure Chris and I had no idea what we were doing and didn't have one at first. Yeah. So don't follow our example there. Make sure you protect yourself because it is important. Unfortunately, not every client is as great as Chris. So you might end up in a situation where you need it. So make sure you protect yourself.
No, that's great information. I mean, I think too is we want to trust everybody, right? But when there's a transaction happening, when there's money being moved from one hand to the other hand, I think it's really good for both you, but also for the business owner too, to have that contract in place. So I think that's not just like, oh, I don't want to be rude and have a contract. It actually makes the business owner feel really good as well, because now you're working with somebody who's serious.
Yeah, and there's a few things that you should include in that contract. I'm not going to go into every single thing because, again, I'm not a lawyer, but a few specific things to look for. Make sure you include things in there about your rate, what types of services and tasks you're providing to the business owner, because if things start to escalate outside of that, you can charge more for your services and go back to the contract as a point of reference. Make sure you put in like what your availability is in terms of either number of hours you're working, if it's that type of arrangement, or what types of day, what times of day you're available, if that's a concern to the business owner. So make sure you guys put in all of those clarifying details before you guys sign the contract, both you and your client. You should also make sure from a business owner standpoint, they're probably going to be looking for protections as far as protecting their information, making sure there's a non-disclosure, maybe a non-compete that you should be looking for too. So keep your eyes open for those types of things on your contracts.
Okay. So I have a question here from Wendy. I'm going to pop up on the screen. She says, how do you know it's a legit business when you provide info?
Okay. So are you saying when you're providing info for a client to get work? I'm assuming that's the question.
Yeah, I think that's what I think she's saying as well.
Yeah. So a lot of times, Wendy, you're going to be starting out with business owners and suggestions from your warm network, like we talked about earlier, if that's your starting point for marketing your new virtual assistant business. But if you start to step outside of that, my first recommendation is to look for clients that you already know their business. So people you follow online, maybe you follow small businesses, you buy products from small companies, local companies, things like that. Those are great places to look for first because you already know they're a reputable business, right? So you don't ever have to worry about that.
Okay, great question, Wendy. And she did say, yeah, that's what she was following up on. Okay, so kind of refreshing here. Number one is we're looking for and pitching clients. If you're just joining us, we talked about that a few minutes ago. Number two is pricing your services. There's lots of different ways to do this. One thing that I really liked is Kayla just set a flat bar. She said United States virtual assistants do not drop below $20 an hour. And I totally agree with that. Number 3 is make sure your business is set up. It's like an actual business. You have a contract in place. You have some agreement, some type of agreement between you and the business owner. So there's no confusion. There's no gray area. It's very black and white. And that is helpful to the business owner as well, I promise. All right. Number 4 is probably my favorite. And it's something that I think you do an amazing job at, is building client relationships. Let's just focus a little bit on that.
Yeah, so this is probably my favorite part. And so it's actually really great to hear that you think I do a great job of that. So building client relationships, I think this is absolutely huge, because as a virtual assistant, you're not going to be successful over the long term if you just find a couple of clients and then rest on your laurels, right? You have to continue to build those relationships and grow your network over time, because you are a business owner, right? And part of business success over the long term is your network and your relationships. So the first thing you need to do is communicate, communicate, communicate. And I know that sounds so easy, you guys, but the biggest complaint from business owners when it comes to virtual assistants not working out is that they don't communicate, right? They don't report in about tasks, or they don't ask questions. They're not getting their work done on time, things like that. So if you're going to miss a deadline, just tell your clients. They're humans. Chris has a wife, he has kids, he has things going on. He understands if I tell him I'm not going to make my deadline today because something crazy happened, as long as that doesn't happen all the time and I communicate with him, then we're going to build a strong relationship over time, and he'll be more willing to recommend me to other people so I can continue to grow my business. So that's where
Absolutely.
that really comes into play.
So, and I'll just hit on this. I do remember one time, so your birthday was this week. It was right before mine.
Yeah.
And I remember I had got an email from you, and you had said, hey, I'm going to take Monday off because it's my birthday. Are you okay with that? And I'm like, I want to give you the whole, don't do anything for the week. It's your birthday. But the reason why is because it was, I remember it was weekends. Sometimes I get updates from you of, hey, we had an update happen in WordPress. I just want to give you a heads up. And I'm like, man, she is on it. And so I also really appreciated, and I think you need to understand every client's going to be a little different. So for me, I will say, and maybe Kayla can definitely attest to this, that if you look at the Enneagram scale, I'm a number 7, which means I am high excitement, low follow through. So I am like a squirrel that bounces around, and I'm like, yes, this is great. And then I go to the next thing and say, no, this is great. And then I go to this thing and I say, this is great. So I every, 7 to 8 minutes, I get a new idea and I want to go try that idea right away. And then I don't follow through. That's what I do.
Yeah.
And so I remember you would be like, well, maybe we should put this on the to-do list for later and we could focus on what we were already doing. I needed somebody like that. So
right.
Yes, I was
I think that's a great key too, is just finding clients where you can kind of balance each other out and really build a strong relationship in your business that way. Because, what the business owner, what you don't have, you should be looking for in your VA, and VAs, you should be looking to kind of fulfill that for your clients too, and kind of anticipate what those needs are. And I think my favorite thing, just real quick, as we finish up this section too, is, my personal philosophy is to always leave everything better than it was when I started somewhere. So to me, that means, what can I do to grow this business? Or what can I do to improve the life of my client? Whatever that looks like for me, to provide value to them and leave everything better than it was when I started with them.
So I see a lot of questions coming in the comments. We're going to get to those questions here in a minute. I just wanted to get through these things before we get off track. So if you're asking questions and we're not answering them, I do see them. We are going to definitely address them. And if you have questions, please feel free to ask. We want to make sure you feel comfortable getting the information, that you understand the information. So lastly, step 5 is, it's kind of the meat and potatoes of being a virtual assistant.
Yes. So step 5 is all about productivity and scheduling. So this is where you actually get into creating that daily schedule, making sure you're managing all of your deadlines, which can be super important, because as a virtual assistant, you're going to be working with multiple clients on multiple projects and multiple deadlines all at the same time. So being able to make sure that you have proper tools to organize your business, tools to automate as many tasks and things as possible is going to be huge. And that is something that I teach a lot more in depth, because that's something that I absolutely love doing, is productivity and scheduling. I'm kind of a nerd.
I loved it too. I mean, I was just like, everything had to, I always tell people, being a full-time firefighter, I'd always get this question like, Chris, how do you do it all? And I would just say, I don't do it all. I have Kayla. And I have this conveyor belt of information, and then she just takes it all and she puts it together, and the site looks pretty, and the podcasts go out, and the social media gets posted, and the emails get responded to, and it's amazing. And they're like, well, what is that called? It's called a virtual assistant. All right, I have a great question here. This kind of just goes off to what you were saying too about multiple clients. So yes. Wendy says, is it good to do this when you have a full-time job?
Yeah, great question. So I actually had a full-time job when I started working with
That's right.
Chris. Yeah, I still had a job when we started working together. So yeah, you can absolutely do this while you still have a full-time job. I actually did most of my work for the first year of my virtual assistant business alongside my job in the evenings, in the weekends, things like that. And then as my business grew, I was able to quit my full-time job and take my business full-time because my part-time business was making the same amount of money as my full-time job at the time that I quit. So that was an amazing feeling. You can absolutely balance it though over the long term. The great thing is you could choose to work with just, 1 or 2 clients, maybe 5-10 hours a week, something smaller. If you wanted to do it long term to help pay off debt, improve your finances, save money, whatever that looks like for you.
Okay, I have another great question or just a comment here. I'm going to pop it on the screen. So Jenny says, this is a great idea, but specialized work would be great too. Like a VA for like real estate or attorneys. Do you have any, do you help anybody in that area right there?
So the 10K VA course actually teaches virtual assistants across the board, but we do have students who specialize in niches. And that is something we cover in the program is how to specialize and how that can actually help you make a lot more money as a virtual assistant as well. So we have a lot of VAs who specifically work with real estate agents, exactly like you mentioned. We have some who work specifically with live event planners. We have some who work with wedding planners that only help with wedding planning VAs. So that's a very interesting, topic and niche for sure.
Okay, Thomas asked a great question. Is this something a husband and wife can do together? Have you seen anything like that?
I actually have. I've seen husband and wife teams come together to create a virtual assistant agency, and they may end up actually calling it more like a marketing agency or a consulting agency or something like that. But it could be, that the wife maybe provides more of the admin type services, and maybe the husband does more of the marketing, or vice versa. Whoever plays to each strength, right? But you can definitely work together. I've also seen other, individuals come together too to create partnerships. There are virtual assistant agencies that can actually be a team of VAs that can all specialize in specific areas and then provide services to business owners in that capacity as well.
That's awesome. Okay. I love that too. So yeah, I would say, here's my take on this. Let's say you're a husband and wife team. Whoever is in a relationship, there's always going to be somebody who is better at like the back end stuff. And there's always going to be somebody who's better with people. So like if my wife and I were going to be a husband-wife team, Andrea, my wife, would be the person being the face and talking. And I would be like back here, typing on the computer and doing all the background. So use your strengths on that one. I think that's a great idea. I mean,
that's actually a really great question, especially right now, I think, because I can attest to this personally. I've been running this business for 5 years, and because of what's going on right now in our world with the coronavirus and all of that, my fiance is actually sitting right next to me. He's been brought home from work. And so I've actually brought him into the business because, it made sense for us at the time. And here we are running it together. So it's been pretty fun.
I will just as a side note, warning, if you can see here, for those of you listening, you're not gonna be able to see this, but right to my left shoulder here is where my wife sits. And so we have been working in the same office for a little over a year now. And I'll tell you what, you really get to know what a marriage is when you're shoulder to shoulder with somebody. So just be careful with that, Kayla. Be careful with that.
I appreciate the warning. I will pass that along too.
Okay. So going back to if somebody's listening right now, I know there's people on right now, there's people listening right now. And the reason why they're still listening is because they want to generate income from home, either part-time or full-time. They already love doing assistant type work. So it makes sense for them to be a virtual assistant. They like the idea of starting at $20 an hour and being able to work up from there. That makes sense. So the hardest part, I think, for people is just getting started as a virtual assistant.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we have a site on our a webpage on Money Peach. We talk about all the different ways to make money. And we do talk about getting started very quickly as a virtual assistant. And some of the ways out there are companies out there, like I'll give you an example. One of them is Upwork. Now, Upwork's a great way to get started, but really it is like, think of it as thousands and thousands of virtual assistants, and then people apply for, hey, I need somebody to do this really quick. And it's kind of a one-off, spin-off job. You're not going to build that relationship. And Upwork, since they are creating this list of businesses for you to just match up with, that they're going to take a cut, and they take a pretty good cut, and you're not going to make $20 an hour, at those places. No. So this is why I remember when you and I had the conversation a couple of years ago. You said, Chris, I'm not going to be able to be your virtual assistant forever because my dream has been to help other people become virtual assistants. Yeah. And so how could somebody work with you?
Yeah, so my website, kaylasloan.com, is a great place to get started. I have free resources on there if you're looking at becoming a virtual assistant. We're actually having some free workshops coming up too. I know Chris has some more details on that. And that's just a great place to get started with some free resources. You can definitely get started as a virtual assistant very, very quickly. I actually coach and teach virtual assistants through my program 10K VA, appropriately named because in my virtual assistant business, I was consistently earning $10,000 per month, providing services to business owners like Chris and others. And so after creating that program, a lot of my students have also seen that same level of success, which is great. So definitely check that out too if you're interested. And really just, this is something you can get started with right away. Most of my students get started in 30 days or less, have more than one client coming right out the gate. So it's definitely a very viable option to work from home.
So when Kayla and I decided that we were going to do this live together and we're going to record this for the podcast, Kayla has this program right here. If you're watching, obviously you can see. If not, we're going to put links to what we're talking about here inside the podcast at the very bottom of the episode. You'll be able to grab links there. We'll have all these links in our show notes as well if you're listening. But you'll see here one of the things that Kayla does is, so she has a program which I know many people that have gone through our program. Lots of people that know me personally, I have sent over to them because she does a great job. Now, if you look here, her prices for the program here is, her course is $497, and then she has the lifetime of $1797. And so Kayla was gracious enough to say, I can cut the price a little bit for Money Peachers. So for listening here on Money Peach, I'll put links. You know what, we'll do moneypeach.com/10KVA. And it definitely knocks off quite a bit there. So you're saving up to $400 by just being here on the workshop. If you don't, you could go here to just 10K VA and you could pay retail. But because you are a fan of Money Peach, we have this set up for you as well. So, but Kayla, you're only it says here. So we can only have this go till about, let's see.
It's midnight next week, Friday. So that's what we've got it set up for as of now. So.
Okay, and now let's say that this sounds good, but you're still maybe a little bit on the fence. You're not quite sure. Maybe somebody wants to get to know you a little bit better, which is also a great idea. Where I know you said you were going to do a live or a group coaching event on your Facebook page.
I'm actually doing a live workshop next week. And that is just at kaylasloan.com/register. So.
Okay. And I'm going to put your Facebook page up there Perfect. As well.
That sounds great.
And so in the comments and in the links on the podcast. But yeah, so What day is that going to be? Just repeat.
We are having one on Tuesday as well as next week, Wednesday.
And what does that cost to show up to that?
So the workshop is completely free. We are going to go much more in depth into the 5 steps that you and I touched on today. So we'll talk much more specifically about where to look for those clients, how specifically to price your services, including a way to specifically calculate for all of those taxes and expenses, what to include in your contract, how to set up your business, all of those types of things in much more depth next week for free.
Okay. And let me put in here, I'm going to put in the comment section. Give me 1 second. 10KVA. Okay, so I just put in the comments, and again, I'll put in the links on the podcast, moneypeach.com/10KVA. That's going to take you to that page that is going to be $400 less than what the rest of the world pays for. So the nice thing is when Kayla helps you grow your business and you become good friends with Kayla, you could say, Kayla, is there anything that you can do to make people that follow Money Peach feel a little bit special? So I appreciate you doing that. And I have I have the link up on the screen. We're going to put it in the podcast. If anybody has any other questions, you can go to moneypeach.com/askpeach. That's moneypeach.com/askpeach. You can ask me a question. You can actually do an audio recording. And what I can do is I can send you a audio recording back, or if it's specifically for Kayla, Kayla, would you mind if I sent that to you and they can answer?
That's great. I would love to do that. That sounds super fun.
Okay, so that's moneypeach.com/askpeach, ASK Peach, and there'll be a little microphone. You click on it. You can do it from your phone or your desktop, and we'd love to hear from you. And I do tell people, if you ask really good questions, we could take you and put you on the show, your audio recording. So be careful what you say. Nobody say anything crazy. Kayla, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate having you on the show. And again, there would be no Money Peach if it wasn't for Kayla. I'll be honest. I wasn't smart enough or talented enough, or I wouldn't have been able to figure it all out. So having somebody in your corner, and I just think that on the other side of that, if you're watching this, listening to this, how special would that feel to know that you helped a struggling business owner, or maybe a great business owner, become even better because of you? And I like what she said. She really wanted to make sure she left it better than she found it. So Kayla, thank you so much. Any last words that you want to leave us with before we end the call?
I don't think so, other than just thank you so much again for having me. And if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to help in any way that I can.
All right. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you.